President Trump calling out Russia's role in Syria's chemical attacks as the basis for missile strikes on Assad's regime.
Here to explain why it's so important to provide evidence that counters Putin's narrative is Daniel Hoffman, a former CIA station chief who, of course, served in Moscow, Iraq, and Pakistan. Great to have you on, Daniel, for your perspective. No one better. Thank you so much.
Good to be here.
So just your reaction to the president's statement last night, specifically calling out Russia and Iran, saying you have a choice to make. You can either stick with the dictator or you can work with the free world.
I thought that was an eloquent speech. I think the president and Ambassador Nikki Haley have been great at tag teaming Iran and Russia and Syria. It's really important. We may recall back in the days of the Soviet evil empire when the Soviets routinely disdained the truth, and it was over to our senior government officials to make the point, to speak the truth. And in this case, I think that, our administration, the president, has led the way in doing so. I think we'll see some battlefield assessment today from those 3 sites that we hit yesterday, the Syrian Chemical Research Facility, and the other 2 facilities, chemical storage sites near homes. That will be important. But I'd also like to see some follow-up from our regional allies, not just from Britain and France, but maybe from Turkey and from others in the region who can support us.
Daniel, did we do enough? Or was the strike sufficiently limited to chemical facilities, making sure we didn't have any civilian casualties? Or could we and should we have done more to strike fear or complexity into the minds of Russia, which is ultimately making the calculation here?
Right. This is a balancing act, and it's tricky for the administration. There's a couple of things going on here. First of all, the Syrians have killed a lot of civilians, a lot more civilians with conventional weapons than they have with chemical weapons. And so there's concern there about Assad's military power writ large and the ability that he has to inflict harm on civilians. And the other concern for Secretary Mattis in particular was that we didn't want to escalate these strikes to the point that we targeted Russian military and Iranian military. This was designed to target the Syrians. During the Cold War, there was kind of an unwritten rule that we would not directly target the Soviets. Certainly we did with proxies. And in this case, I think great pains were taken not to target the Russians. We haven't seen a real Russian forceful response beyond some rhetoric from Vladimir Putin. So again, I think that the administration is balancing these challenges, and I think what we have to see now is how do the Syrians react and the Russians as well, and then I'm sure our administration is planning for potential follow-on action.
But Dan, the Russian ambassador to the U.S., Antonov, is saying that we feel threatened, that these actions will have consequences. So as the administration starts to craft their larger strategy, if you will, what is the correct response? Clearly, Russia is saying that there will be consequences.
Well, what the Russians have been saying, and I read the Russian press this morning, is that this attack last night was a pretext to target the Assad regime. And so what they're doing is they're kind of taking a shot across the bow, but with rhetoric and no other further action, trying to induce us not to take the action that will topple Assad. I think there are many in this country, me included, who believe that the only way to stop Assad from killing innocent civilians is to remove him from power. That is not the administration's policy right now, but that's what Russia and Iran would fear.
You make a great point. It is such a delicate balance, and it seems like so far last night it was the right decision to make, Daniel Hoffman.
I think balancing everything it was, yes.
But ultimately, but Russia doesn't want a shooting war with America. Can we push the envelope more to bring them to their knees on this?
Well, I think that's certainly the question I'd be asking if I were in the White House of our intelligence community. What was Russia's response? Where's our intelligence collection, our human intelligence and signals intelligence, and how far can we push this before we risk Russian retaliation? You may recall that the Russians infiltrated our nuclear and electric power grids. The Iranians have militias in the region. We have 2,000 troops there. There are ways that the Russians can get back at us and respond, and thus far they have not. So we've kind of won that balancing act so far, but it is an ongoing challenge. And again, I would just highlight this was left over. Those chemical weapons were supposed to have been destroyed in June of 2014. So this is a really challenging situation for us.
That's a great
Such
point.
an important reminder. Yeah, they said they were all gone. Turns out they're not.
Right, not quite.
Daniel, thank you.
Daniel Hoffman, thank you so much.